Welcome to the Apothic Energy podcast. I have on the show today Joe Shoemaker, a dear friend of mine, a fellow student of the Lightsong School of 21st Century Shamanism and Energy Medicine. Joe and I have also explored other areas of energy medicine outside of shamanism. We've worked with Pamela Rico, who likes to talk about alchemy and manifestation. And we've also worked, I believe, independently with Karen Hefner in other trainings and other classes that kind of support and tie in other elements of the world alongside of shamanism, which has been a joy to do alongside of with you. I'm going to have Joe speak a little bit about himself and what he brings to the table regarding his life experiences and some of the trainings that he's had.
Thank you, Sarah Marie, for inviting me. I'm really, really happy to be with you today.
Thank you.
Yeah. When I was in first grade and I was sitting at a table doing, I think, math work, I realized that I was actually up in the corner looking down at myself. And that was, at that time, obviously a pinnacle experience for a 6-year-old or however old I was, but one that didn't shake me, it didn't rattle me. It felt actually fairly normal.
Mm-hmm.
And I carried inside of me this yearning to understand that mystery. And I delved into various religious sects when I was in my teens. And then when I got into my 20s, I found music as a gateway to go there, Jimi Hendrix and Grateful Dead, and the way that they would take you on this journey. Little did I know I'd go on a different journey later on. And I'd like to say that I toiled through corporate America for 15 years before I had a Reiki session that changed my life. And receiving energy work consistently for 5 months changed my entire being so much that I had no choice but to quit my job. I quit my career, really just leave the entire thing, as we would say, leave the matrix.
Mm-hmm.
And when I did that, although I went kicking and screaming because I was leaving money on the table and 401ks and health plans and all the stuff that you feel like is stabilizing for you, I realized that I was meant to do healing work, that as I was healing myself, that I was also meant to learn these techniques and strategies and mysterious tools so that I could help others, always wanting to help others throughout my entire life, just not finding myself in the right spot until I said, I've got to create the spot.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I did. And so Reiki was first. I learned Reiki, and then I found essential oils right after that with my wife, April. We've been studying together for years together on the same path. And then shamanic work came in because somebody asked me, I think you can do space clearings, right? I think I've got like a ghost or an entity in my house. You could do that, right? And I had no idea. So I bought a book from Denise Lynn about sacred space and clearing it, and didn't know what I was doing. And I literally lit a fire in this room, and I really was unprepared for what that was doing to both of us.
I don't think I know that story. That's great.
It scared the crap out of me, really, because I was not a fire tender. I've got an internal fire, but externally I'm not as keen on that. But nonetheless, I found Lightsong on recommendation from my Reiki master. She had actually given me lots of different names. Betsy Bergstrom was one of them. The Four Winds Foundation was another one. And Jan's program at Lightsong was the only one that fit my ideals and my schedule and cost. It was just a program that was developed on offer. And so I took it. And so I've been studying along with you for at least 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
And finally this year graduated with soul retrieval training, which was sort of a pinnacle or capstone class, which has been a beautiful experience. I missed the part about reflexology in there, which was the hands-on healing modality of Reiki. Didn't feel like quite enough, but the hands-on reflexology with skin contact, that felt really, really easy for me. And like I said at the time, with a last name like Shoemaker, it was a destiny to work on feet in some capacity. And so that was bread and butter for a long time. But I could migrate and merge all of these things together in sessions for people. And so over the course of over 2,000 people, I was giving Reiki, giving reflexology, journeying into shamanic realms, clearing spaces, whatever they needed, I was sort of showing up in that way. And then coming out the other side, largely in part to the pandemic and hands-on business, sort of settling, I've really gotten into producing events for leaders like yourself. And with a well-being backbone, with an energy and revitalization core to leadership, which I believe is the precursors to good leadership. It's taking care of ourselves first. And that's where I'm currently exploring and curating and developing and bringing on all these other tools to make it successful. And so in short, here I am as an energetic being on a path of expansion, supporting others on the same path.
Yes, I love it. You've had a beautiful journey. And at the end of our time, I'll have you speak more to the upcoming event that you have regarding leadership and connecting that with spirituality. But at the moment, I want to go back to something you said at the very beginning about how you left stabilizing factors in your life, the corporate world, income, 401k plan, health insurance, how you left things that felt stabilizing to pursue something that felt like it was more in alignment with yourself. Why I think that's key is because our topic of discussion today is the new earth. And I personally believe that so much of the creation of the world we're going into requires letting go of those things that we have considered stabilizing, the things that have been set into place for us that give us what I believe is the illusion of stability or certainty or even safety, so that we can choose something different, something that is beyond where we've been. And so my first question is about what you think the new earth is. You let go of something in your personal life to create essentially a new world, a new experience for yourself. And I think that's happening worldwide. So I'm wondering if you could speak to your observations of what's happening on our planet, and what the new earth really is. Is it a location, or is it more of a mindset that we're moving into?
That's a great question. And I think it's really all of that. But from my perspective, and of course, this is just my perspective, perhaps not to be shared with everybody, but this is how I feel in the moment, subject to change after more study, of course. But I feel that if we look at our bodies as energetic systems, and we have these in the spiritual traditions of India, we've got the chakra system. In other traditions, they call them different things. Like in Western medicine, they call them gangland nerve bundles. These are energy centers. They're portals. I think that New Earth raises us out of the lower energies and into the higher energies, heart and above. Physically, which affects mindset, which affects location, because you've heard of yogis in India, among other people, being able to bilocate. They've created a new earth.
Yes.
And they can transmit through it as they please. So, and for purposes that, are probably bigger than us, we should be able to do that too. And I think that's a rising of energy in our energy body that will allow us to do that. And that's an incredible opportunity for us. It feels like most of us are very much still struggling in these lower energies of fear, scarcity, worthlessness, lack, whatever you want to call it. And these things can be tempered. They can be changed, as you know, in your path as well. You've tempered and changed yours.
Mm-hmm.
And the new earth, I think, comes from the heart and rises out through our crown and makes manifest a completely different way of being.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a beingness.
I like that. So what do you think I want to talk about how we're getting to that place inside of ourselves. But first, I'm curious what you think some of the attributes of the new world are going to be. Because the contrast of the new earth is right now, right? And so what do you think some of the attributes of the new earth are that we're moving into?
I think fundamentally, and obviously this may take generations to change. I'm also open to magic and miracles, so it may not. It may be quicker than that. We don't know. Seemingly, with the way that things are going, it might take a while. I'm just collecting the energy around this thought because it's deep. We're talking about a completely new way of showing up in the world. So how do we do that?
Mm-hmm.
And how do we do that together with others? And that collaborative nature, I think, is where we're headed, because we let go of judging everybody with a knee-jerk reaction. I think that's one of the first things that will have to be changed, reoriented, or re-engineered, so that we can approach every single person with integrity and purity and contentment, as opposed to competition and envy.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the things that need to change. So if we can get rid of envy and I think in Buddhism they call it torpor, sloth-like tendencies. If we can get rid of all of that and we can approach somebody with an open heart, the whole world changes. That's where I think it has the potential to go, however long that is.
Yeah. So the beginning place is ourselves. The beginning point is inside of us. And when I first broached this topic with you, you had said that there's so much in your world right now about purifying the mind and body of old world patterns. And so I'm wondering if you can speak more to that, because to me, that's the how-to. That's how we get to that place of non-judgment, how we get to a core sense of self so that we can operate from not our programming, but who we really are.
Mm. I have an amazing friend who I worked with when I was in the marketing industry. I think he really prevented me from going off the deep end, because he was so mindful and he practiced mindfulness regularly and consistently. And one time he came down to visit me and he was sitting on my couch and he said, "Hey, you want to play a little game?" And I said, "Yes, of course." And he said, "I want you to start speaking a sentence and then I'm going to cut you off and you can't say anything for 90 seconds. But I want you to claim a thought that you are passionate about. It could be anything. It could be baseball. It could be the color of paint that you like on the wall, whatever it is." And so I went into something I was passionate about and started getting into it. And he let me go for a little while and then he cut me off and he said, "Stop." And I could feel my entire body almost trembling because I couldn't say what I really wanted to. And we practiced this repeatedly over and over and over again. And by, I don't know, the 6th or 7th time, whatever I had these extended emotions regarding tempered themselves. It just didn't have this same zing as it did before. And that was the purpose, is because we've let our emotions run wild. We've let our minds run wild. And in that, we sort of just, we react too quickly because the emotions are the ones that are making that reaction, or we don't give ourselves any time to reflect. Am I about to say something that is useful? Am I about to say something that is hurtful? Am I about to say something that is even needed? Do I even need to say something? We don't take time for that. There's no filter. I think this new world that we're talking about, we have a great filtration system. In every area of our lives, we have filtration. We get rid of the chlorine in the bathtub. We get rid of particles in the air with air filters, tons of filters everywhere, except over this thing.
Yes.
So that's got to start with these practices. You said the how-to, the practices of purifying thought through a filtration process. This is why people go to Vipassana meditations for 10 days and don't speak at all. Now that's an extreme thing, and that may not be for everybody right now, but that's a how-to.
Yeah, I am. It is what you just mentioned is an extreme way of finding that natural pause rather than being in a reactionary place. But I think that life right now kind of demands the extreme swing from one way of being to the other in order for us to find balance. I think we're immersed, especially in this time right now, in a place of being reactionary. There's so much happening right now that is making us feel unsafe that we're responding defensively. And we are responding from what I consider like the passions of survival. We're in a place where what we know to be true, the things that make us feel safe, are being taken from us. And so there is kind of like this wild caged animal feeling right now, where we all feel like we have something to say, and we feel like we know what needs to be done, but we are not creating for ourselves the pause to allow for the development of what the next steps are. And so I really like that story, because I think that that individual story is happening planetary wide right now, where we're being asked to stop. We are in the force of our own lives, and that has been cut off from us, and now we're being forced to pause and be in our own energy without the power to create an action.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
so this brings me to a thought that I have when I think about the creation of the new earth, which is cultivating a sense of self in a moment of crisis, and why that's important. Some of my thoughts are, you know, when so much of us feels like it's out of order, there's this struggle to orient ourselves in what feels like chaos. And during a time of great change, like what's happening now, I feel like it's easy to feel like we're being buffeted by life rather than being an active participant in it. And I think these moments demand that we make sense of our own energy first
Mhm.
before we begin participating.
Making sense of our own energy. That's a
Yeah.
that's a big statement that not everybody could really grasp onto, but that's
I
why
don't
we're
think,
here.
yeah, I don't think we have a sense of ourselves. I think we're so used to looking outside of ourselves for what the right thing is, that we're out of practice, or maybe don't even know at all what it means to know our own truths.
I wholeheartedly agree. And uh, yearly, twice a year, I get a Vedic astrology reading because I believe that the cosmos has the keys to timing, especially in our lives. And if we feel frustrated, astrology is an amazing way to receive timing so that we can put ourselves back into order. You know,
Hmm.
I know where I'm going, so I can give myself a little bit of pause, or I can hurry up and go. And in that conversation with this astrologer recently, um, she talked about the three keys to my success, which are prioritizing pranayama breathing. Of course, they're going to talk from a Hindu perspective because that's what Vedic astrology is, but pranayama breathing and yoga and meditation. And she said, really, the meditation part is the most critical for you because self-referencing is the only way that you're going to get good information.
Hmm.
And I will always carry that phrase with me because that's what you're talking about. You're talking about self-referencing. For many of us, though, that is a new concept because we've been looking outside of ourselves, or we've been numbing ourselves to our own energy, so we can't self-reference. There's nothing to reference because the self has been clouded.
Right. I think that we're actually drawn outside of ourselves during a time of crisis. But what the demand, I think, is also alongside of that is the opposite, so that we can be in our own power in the midst of the powers that are being undone right now.
Mm,
And the powers that are being undone right now are the ones that have been our guiding force, have been the ones that are navigating life for us, like giving us five options and saying, these are your choices, pick one.
mm.
And now all of those options are disintegrating. And so we're in a place of having to create our own choices.
That is it right there.
Yes. And so knowing your own self, and you're calling it a reference point. I'm writing a little bit about using creating a reference point to filter our external circumstances through. And
Mhm,
how do we do that? And it's really knowing your own energy so well that you can use it as a tool of discernment.
mhm, mhm. So this is going to lead me to a course of study that I've undertaken thanks to an amazing friend that I've got here in Portland, named Richard, who owns Karaoke Bowls, giving him a shameless plug. Please go get your acai bowls on Alberta Street or down in Slabtown on 21st Street.
Nice.
Um, he he is a yoga teacher, and he is an expert in microchakra philosophy. Microchakra philosophy, it's a new term for many people. And one of the parts of this philosophy is focuses on how a child was born, how a child was born being a critical step in the either evolution of your energy body or the stagnancy of your energy body. If a child who was inside the womb that was warm and fluid and just had this beautiful seamless experience, almost like a fish in water, and then suddenly comes out, lays on its back, and sees the brightest fluorescent light that you could possibly see as its first inauguration into life. Uh, that's damaging to the energy system,
Mm,
and it locks us down. And now, if we're aware of it later in life, we can work to unlock it through practices, and that's what we're going to talk more about today, or it will remain locked.
hmm
That's why a lot of people come to shamans and other energy healers, is because they will even say, I feel blocked. They know they have a block, but they're not aware of how or where or what the options are to address it. And
hmm
that's why we're there. So I ask people to maybe contact, if there's a good relationship with their parents, um, ask what their birth was like. Understand that. For some, it's super traumatic. You hear about that. And for some, they were born in water and it was a ceremony and it was beautiful and it was in the woods. I mean, ideally, that's how you were born. For most of us in the Western world, it was probably in a hospital with fluorescent lights, and some had forceps. And we've got some energetic problems because of that. And then add on the fact that if you were born in the 70s, like I was, uh, often doctors told mothers not to breastfeed, and they would just give them soy milk, which is what I had. And that's another energetic problem, is that you're not feeding from mother's milk, which is
hmm
the nourishment of life. A lot of us don't know that story about ourselves. I think that's empowering to know it, because there's ways to shift it once you know that. So we're
hmm
talking about energy centers specifically becoming stagnant because of those early stages of life. Now we get into the practices that will help to change the physical body, change the energy body so it changes the physical body, one of which is sound. And we know that from working in light song, that when you rattle, and especially when you drum, everything in your body is different afterwards. Even if you only drum for 3 minutes, you've changed the cellular expression and you feel like you've got more space. So I'm speaking for myself. I'd love to know how you feel after you drum, but I feel open, expanded. And if there were blocks that I felt walking into the room, now they feel cleared. Is that how you feel
hmm
too?
Yeah, I think sound diffuses density.
Good way to
And
put it.
so when I use the drum for myself, but I often use it with my clients, and I ask them to invite the drum into their body and to take it into the places that feel stuck. And there's usually a conversation beforehand about like where an emotion lives in their body, or where they think a block exists in their body. So I have a difficult time creating intimacy in my relationships, or I have a difficult time accessing my ambition or my creativity. I ask them to get a sense of where that is in their body. And the first thing I do before I even go into a shamanic journey, or ask the spirits to show me something, the first thing I do is drum and have them invite the drum into those places to kind of diffuse the density. and prepare it to move or to change or to shift. And a lot of times, if something isn't really deep rooted or someone has done some work already around the issue, the drum is enough, which is magical in its own right, because I think a lot of times we want something to be more complicated than it actually is. But if it's simply a dense gathering of energy in your body, that it can sometimes only require paying attention to it and asking for it to leave. And sound is a really useful tool in doing that kind of work. For myself, what I've used the drum to do, I consider that extraction work, extracting something that's not a match for who I truly am. But in the discernment work, and this is another thing that I've taught in classes for people who are wanting to have a better sense of self, I actually bring the drum into the chakra system. And I ask them to feel the drum only in one chakra, feel it only in your root chakra. And then I ask them to move it up to the sacrum and move it up to the solar plexus. And we go through the whole chakra system using the drum as a way to help the mind locate where your energy is and help your body locate where the energy is. So there's a sensation component. There's like the mind being engaged by sending it to a location. And just by paying attention to your own energy, you're able to grow it, to nurture it. It's like a fortifying of your own energy because you're paying attention to it in a different way.
That's beautiful.
So, yeah, and that for me right now, when we're talking about cultivating a sense of self, being with yourself, being in your own energy is the first step. Being in a place where you can pay attention to yourself and feel yourself as something separate from the energies that are happening around you.
That is absolutely perfectly stated. And I will say the reason I started with sound is because most of us grow up listening to music, listening to pop music, unless you have someone classically trained in your house, and then obviously you have a different, sense of music. But that's common for us. And the thing that happens when we listen to music is we start to move. So the stagnancy really can't exist when you start to dance to the music, right? And that's a little bit on a crude level, pop music, because there's not intention to necessarily heal a person through that music, although it can be, for sure. If you listen to some Joni Mitchell songs, they're intended to really get to the core, right? So that's one way, and many different types of sound. Now, you have had the experience of doing sound baths before with the gong and the big crystal bowls. Well, I'm just giving the listeners a little taste of all the different ways you can have this sense of self through sound. I'm sure we can probably find sound healers who can convene safely and still be able to perform this work today during our times.
What I like about sound baths is that you're feeling your own energy engaged by the sound. And then there is this natural sensation of connecting to the energy of the other people that are in that group with you. So I'm talking about group sound baths. And that feels like a really safe way, because I think the sound creates a natural buffer between your energy and other people's energy. But it also allows you to have a sense of yourself because you're vibrating with the sound. And then you can also kind of expand your consciousness, expand your awareness to get a sense of what else is happening around you. And so for me, sound baths have more than one purpose in my personal life. It allows me to get a sense of myself, and then I can kind of safely assess or feel what else is happening around me. And because the sound is vibrated, the frequencies are the same, like our energies become attuned to each other. And so it's an individual experience, and then it's a group experience. And I think that's a really good practice to be in now, because so much of the collective consciousness is coming undone. So much of the constructs are being dismantled, that our energy is kind of sifting out of them and coming back to us. And so those larger thought forms are going away. Our energy is coming back to us. And so now we're in a place of feeling ourselves. And I think the next step is going to be reaching out to each other, people that are like-minded, to begin reforming what our thought forms are, reforming what our new constructs are going to be. So knowing how to feel yourself and feel others feels important too.
That's great. And we will probably be able to include resources for people that are new to some of
Please.
this work
Hmm.
afterwards in the show notes,
Sure.
wherever that
Hmm.
is located.
I would
Because
love that. Hmm.
yeah, I want to turn people onto some of the, if you're in Portland and watching, there's several people that do sound healings. Shalom Mayberg is one who's infamous for doing this work here in Portland, and many others as well. And we'll identify them. If you have never done a sound healing before, treat yourself. Spend the $80 or $100 on a sound healing, whether personal or in a safely convening group, because this will give everyone the chance to feel their own energy, and
Hmm.
that's one way to do it. I feel like too, what we're talking about is, which you and I had alluded to earlier, is the idea of purifying.
Hmm.
And that is really what is up for me in my world with the clients that come to see me, what I'm tending to in my own body, what I'm perceiving in the exterior world, which you just talked about as well, the unraveling nature of bigger constructs, which to me is a purification.
Mm.
And so a lot of people do purifications already. It's not something that is new to people. They'll go on a diet. That is a total purification. They'll cut out wheat and sugar and dairy, and they'll lose some weight, and they've purified their liver and their immune system. So not new to us, but in the context that I'm presenting this is purification at a much deeper level, because now it's not just about losing weight or feeling better. Those things are good. It's also creating space enough for us to now be self-referenced, be able to reach out collaboratively to other people to, as you said, reform the way that we're showing up in the world, but to also connect with the truth of who we really are. And if you talk to people who have had near-death experiences, they'll tell you right away, the truth of who we are is beyond words. That we really are a soul spirit having an experience in a physical vessel, but it's something we can't even comprehend because we've been so stuck in the density of a body, which is part of the experience of having a body. That's normal. Purifying will allow this energy to ascend so that we can
Hmm.
experience more of that quality of spirit nature
Hmm.
while we're in a human body. So these two things can merge together. And now we talk about in our shamanic work, walking in two worlds at the same time, walking in a physical world, walking in a spiritual world at the same time. Purification can allow us to get there.
So talk to me about some of the ways you're using with yourself and using with your clients, the ways of purifying.
That's a good question. Because we're addicted to food as a dopamine release, it's often challenging for people to see the long-term benefit of doing a purification of some sort, because we're taking away warmth and comfort. If I eat the chocolate, it gives me warmth and comfort. If I drink the wine, it gives me warmth and comfort. So I always ask people to go really slowly when they do things like this. Yes, you could go cold turkey and cut out wheat, sugar, dairy, alcohol, no social media. You could do that, but you might throw yourself into a fit of some sort. So go slowly. What is the one thing that you're eating that you know aggravates you? What's the one thing that you consistently eat that you know aggravates you?
You mean physically aggravates you?
Exactly. That you know when you put this material into your mouth, that your body goes, I get an
Mhm.
upset stomach, I get nauseous, I get queasy, I have pain, I get constipated, I get foggy. What the numerous ways in which foods can affect us. What is that one thing? For years, for me, it was almond butter, but I kept eating it anyway because I wanted the fat and I loved the creaminess of it. And it was just soothing to me from like a heart space level, but the rest of my body was like, no, this doesn't work for you. And I got rid of it, meaning I decided to replace it with something else that felt the same, but didn't have the same inflammatory response in my body, and my body felt better afterwards.
So why is that important when we're talking about purifying? What is it about being inflamed or being sent into a place of fogginess that takes us out of our sense of self?
That's a great question. Then we identify with the pain. We
Mhm.
identify with the problem. We identify with the fogginess. I am foggy. I am in pain. And that becomes the repetitive thought over and over and over again. Eckhart Tolle talks about this. Then you become in a pain body. And we limit our ability to perceive that which is not just our physical body, or to enact a new way of creating something that is different from who you are, because you're just up against a wall of pain.
Yeah, it's that like the energy that is discordant with our energy becomes the dominant energy.
The dominant energy of the issue. Exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly. And it's like you get together with your friends, that's all you want to talk about. You talk to your family. How are you?
Right.
Oh, let me give you 50 minutes on how I am in misery. You know, you see this all the time. This is also,
Yes.
this is the untrained mind as well. But also rightfully so. I want to give people credit for hanging in there in such a dense world, that we can get over this, but we also need the support to purify. This is not to be done alone in a bubble. We should be able
Mhm.
to have support through this. So yeah,
What I'm liking about what you're saying is using your body as a guide for helping you determine what energies are not good for you, what energies are in discord with your natural alignment. Because I think it's not just food that we consume, right?
mm,
Like it's easy to see the connection between putting a physical substance in our body and then having a physical reaction to it. I think broadening that a little bit and understanding that this can apply to people, this can apply to work, this can apply to lifestyle, this can apply to conversation topics. You know, it's our body often does have a physical response to these less tangible things. And so I like how you're using the body almost as a tool of navigation, how the
that's
body
right.
can help us pay attention more to the things that are not in alignment with us. And why I'm presencing that is because I want people to have a sense of empowerment as they're walking through this process of great change on our planet. And what better way than to use yourself as that discerning tool that we were talking about? It's not just the internal realms that we're talking about. It can be our body that's giving us a sign or giving us a cue that something isn't right. And when you take that something out, the relief that we feel is also a cue or a sign that we're doing something right.
You know how they use dowsing rods to find water?
Mm-hmm.
There's two metal rods. I mean, you can use hangers for this, and you walk along a line until they start to merge. And when they
Mm-hmm.
cross, that's where the water is. It also could be where there's energy that's discordant. That's one way to use the dowsing rods too. I'm illustrating how we're using our body as a dowsing rod.
Mm-hmm.
Ah, there's the issue. Or there's the pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
You get done with a yoga class and if you douse using your body, that's amazing how I just opened up in my chest and my ribs and my spine.
Mm-hmm.
I'm more flexible. That's good.
Yes. So cultivating discernment is really quite simply paying attention to yourself.
Paying attention to yourself. That's right. And not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily paying attention to the problem. It's paying attention to self,
And to
energy
this
inside.
to the stimulus and how the response, how the body is responding to that.
That's right. And so I'll give you a current practice that I have of purification, because this is so common for people. So we'll just get down to the root of it all. When we had fires here in Portland, my digestion switched like momentarily, because we went from humidity that was in the 40% range, 30 to 40, which is typical for summer, and it went down to 9. That's desert. And it stayed there for a long time. And when that happens, that dryness creates dryness in the body as well, dryness in the colon. I became really constipated. That's a tendency for me from a long time ago, but not recently. And I thought, wow, that's really interesting. I could not get it back. I could not right the ship so that I could have regular movements every day, or they were irregular timed. And so I consulted with one of my friends who has done lots of different purifications in different ways. And he said, root chakra elimination is totally off. So we need to work on that part of it. Yeah, you as a shaman, you go up in the 7th chakra and you're connected. But oftentimes we need to start with fundamentals. And we're talking about elimination of waste and getting that out. I believe most of us are clogged. So the roto-rooter, or the fix for that, was eating ground flax seeds with a little bit of lemon juice, pink salt, and a little bit of olive oil mixed up in the morning. And it's got tons of fiber. So I started with that and things started to change. The next step that I took was I stopped eating potato chips. Well, my coping mechanism during COVID has been sampling the bounty of potato chips that is available in every single store that is in Portland. Delicious and very constipating. So I got rid of those, and that changed my body, which is good. And now I'm starting with psyllium husks, and psyllium husks have tons of fiber as well. They expand almost like chia seeds in the body, and they provide roughage, fiber, so that you can eliminate well. When you start going twice a day in the morning and then at another time, that's when you know that chakra is open.
I love that. Again, more ways to use our body as a discerning tool for how we're doing energetically.
If you're not going to the bathroom in the morning within the first hour and a half of waking up, then there's a root chakra elimination issue. And purifying the body to get it into a place of that happening naturally in the morning, then you know it's open.
So would you consider what you're giving me now, this information, is this something that you regularly provide to your clients when they come to you in your practice?
It depends on the receptivity. Many people are not ready to go to this level, even though they're in pain. The crisis hasn't reached fever pitch yet.
So what do you start with?
Usually I start, because so many people come in with sleep disturbances, especially during this time, I usually start with electrolyte balance and having them take a bath with Dead Sea salts. That's the first step, because that's been such a huge tool for me. You get the minerals in your body, magnesium especially, which is a natural sedative. And if you take the bath at night, then you'll probably sleep better than you normally would, because you soaked in warm water first, so your nervous system is calmed, and you had this electrolytes flowing through your body, and you're not depleted, and now you can rest. That's the first step.
So talk to me about the kinds of clients that you usually see in your practice. Like, who are the people that are energetically drawn to you and that show up on your table or in your chair?
That's a good question, and to the new events as well, because there's sort of pods. We've talked about this in our shamanic work, that oftentimes you'll see the same type of client clustered together. You know, you'll see 5 or 6 clients in a week, and they might have the same issue. But 3 weeks from now, 5 or 6 more people will come, and they have their own issue that's different than this group. So it's really kind of curious. I could go through the ebbs and flows in my practice over the years, seeing many people with PTSD and childhood trauma. That was a really big part. And then I would see many people with sleep disturbances. I had them too, so they were naturally attracted to me because I was trying to actively solve it. Today, I mean, you had said this earlier, most people are just in a state of disarray and panic and anxiety. And even if they are not traveling as much as they used to, there's a whole set of new issues to tend to.
Sure.
So busy executives, their nervous system now orients to this screen instead of orienting to packing luggage and traveling and all that kind of stuff. But this now presents its own set of problems too. And so we're getting a ton of screen fatigue, and as a EMF pollution, radiation, and this sense of depletion. That's what I'm currently seeing.
And in a general sense, how are you addressing those issues?
Because I'm a bit of a chameleon and I do have a lot of different trainings, I sort of show up in the way that I feel that they need, or they'll tell me. For a lot of clients, sometimes starting with a meditation and just a breathing clearing exercise just helps them get back in their body. That's the first real step. We're not cognitively processing anything. We're inviting new energy to come in through the breath, and we're calming the nervous system, basically cueing it into a state of rest.
That's great.
That's the first part.
Yeah, I'm just trying to give people a sense of, should they reach out to you if they like what you're saying and what they're talking about, what it is that you're offering or that you're using to help people move through this challenging and difficult time.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So there's a combination of hands-on work and this sort of interpersonal spiritual guidance as well. And so it's really both. If somebody comes in and they're totally panicked, I want to put my hands on them in some capacity. That could be Reiki, that could be foot reflexology, that could be an essential oil treatment on the back, which my wife has coined the trifecta. You do all three in one session, which is a beautiful experience, getting people energetically enlivened. For other people, and especially the leaders that are in the world here in Portland and around our area, they're facing different issues, because how do I show up for all these people who are in disarray when I might be in disarray myself?
Right.
And so they also need all these things. The trifecta is needed, but they also need this sort of guide through some of the problems that they're facing. And it is more sort of cognitive, but it's helping them to become more inner resourceful.
Right. That's one of my favorite things about you, is your ability to connect the spiritual realms with the ordinary reality. And I think that's particularly helpful with people who are in leadership positions.
Yes.
Because there's such an emphasis on the left brain. There's such an emphasis on linear time and the things that are more tangible in our world. And I feel like this is a good segue to start talking about the event that you're creating in just a couple weeks, I think, a few weeks maybe.
Yes.
Coming up in November, you have an event that is specifically targeted for those in leadership.
That's right. And boy, leadership is broad. It could be a solopreneur like yourself. It could be a mom, the greatest leader of all.
Yes.
It could be a leader of an organization of 1,000 people or more. So it's a big term. It doesn't necessarily mean CEO.
Yeah.
You're leading something, whether it's personal or if it's within a group. And these leaders come to these events, which this is the second larger event. I've been producing smaller events for over a year, but the intention of these events is to create a revitalizing day retreat for leaders, where we're helping to increase resiliency to stress, and we're helping to build leadership capacity through practices. And these practices are usually of an ancient origin, but they're super applicable right now. And in fact, we don't even really need to know what the origin is, because they work. And so we invite guest speakers in who have these incredible skills to help leaders to embody themselves, which is how you show up. I show up as a leader, so I am that.
Tying this into the context of our conversation, I think this event, you've held a similar event not too long ago. And so this is because of how well that went, you're doing it again. And from what I understand, it is a time where you can orient yourself in the midst of the chaos that's happening right now, and figure out a sense of who you are in this moment in time, so that you can better help the people under your leadership figure out where they are in this moment in time, and therefore show up in a better way, not only in their personal lives, but also for the agenda of whatever company or organization that you have.
Absolutely. And which is also applicable to taking it home into personal life as well. These skills are transferable. Business skills are not just for business, they're also for life at large.
So is there like a flavor or a theme of this next event that you feel like would be useful or helpful for people to know?
Yes. The main speaker's name is Wendy Palmer, and she is in her mid-70s. She runs an organization called Leadership Embodiment, and she's trained leaders all over the world through the use of Aikido, the Japanese martial art, and mindfulness together to help bring this inner strength through a flow state. And she was very clear with me when I talked to her about coming to this event as a guest speaker, that Her process is not psychological. It is not cognitive. In fact, leaders don't have time to even do those cognitive practices because especially if they're in the tech world where she works primarily, they are fast paced and they don't have 5 minutes to do something. They've got 5 seconds or 10 seconds or 20 seconds. And so she brings these practices through her Aikido practice, which she's a 6-degree black belt, and she has her own dojo in California. She's steeped in wisdoms. She brings this in to give these practices so leaders can orient themselves to a certain state.
Mm.
And now imagine going to a meeting in a state that is not one of panic, stress, anxiety. We've got to get this stuff done quick. And instead, it's what you really want, which is collaboration, creativity, love even.
I love it.
And that's what she does. And then the second speaker, who's a dear friend of mine, her name is Marcia Schenk, also in her mid-70s. So we're talking about 2 wise elder women that will be teaching us, which I think everybody should be benefiting from this. She's in the relational space, which you're an expert at as well. How do we collaborate with each other tangibly and intangibly in an enriching way? We're finding a sweet spot between us as we're having these communications in teamwork.
Yeah, this sounds like vital information for people at this moment in time.
It's vital information, and why these events are called Revitalizing Leaders events. That's exactly what we're doing, is we're combining the best of spirituality and leadership somewhere in the middle.
So give us the website right now here, and then we'll also include it in the notes below for how people can find out more information.
Yes, it's at my website. It's Shoemaker Joe, ShoemakerJoe.com/revitalized leaders, revitalized with a D on the end.
That's great.
And you'll find it.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time. I greatly appreciate it. You mentioned providing resources. If you can get that to me ASAP, I want to be able to have people have that accessible as soon as possible. And then I'm sure we'll have you on again soon.
Beautiful.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I love your face. Give April a squeeze.
I will. Thank you.